Hello, guys, and welcome to today's episode of the Wolf Digest. I am your host, Amaros.
And I'm your co-host, Terkanil. And unfortunately, today wasn't quite as eventful when it came to CES.
Well, there was some pretty cool stuff. I mean, it was opening day officially of CES, day number 1. And so
there wasn't really in the way of like press conferences for us to really sink into. But there were some few things that have been showing that are fun to talk about.
Yeah, we watched a lot of the live streams for the keynotes or some of the announcements and some of the products. But I think what made it uneventful for us as like IT people is that it was mostly, AI and dishwashers and washing machines that are running AI and, massage chairs, things that are, stupid money, really. There was
a massage chair made by Lamborghini.
Oh yeah,
$30,000.
$30,000 for what looks like a battle station from Ready Player One. I mean, there was
a looking chair, but man,
there was some things that do interest us, and we went and pulled those out, as well as some of the stories that are going on right now, because obviously the consumer electronics world is afire right now, and so let's go ahead and jump into some of those stories if you want to give us a quick rundown.
So what we're going to be doing is we have some stories we found that are like we're coming out today, things we found interesting, and so we're going to be weaving both between product and things that came up at CES so far. So we're going to start with something we found a little bit shiny, just partially because it looks pretty,
and we missed it a couple days ago.
Yeah, so we came across this. It's a new 2080 Ti card, but they had a little fun with the design.
Well, I mean, you've seen my intro, right? It's steampunk. I'd call it hat tipping. I got to improve it. I really do. This is Gen 1. I got to work on it to actually get it to be more steampunky, I think. But yeah, I am a big fan of steampunk. I kind of like the look as long as it's not overly done, and I feel that this card has just enough of that steampunk feel that it makes it a really attractive card, and it's not overly done to where it's gaudy, and the LED accents on the dial for the years that the iGame brand has been around from Colorful, as well as the gold and black accent, just makes this card look beautiful. They're running only 1,000 of these cards. You get your exclusive number printed on the back, and it's actually got a 360 millimeter water cooling attachment to it. And if you actually look at the top of the card here, you can see the 2 pegs where that can be optionally plugged into the card, and it has 3 fans that also will actively cool it as well, just with the air. I mean, this is just a gorgeous card. It's huge too, but it's a 2080 Ti, so I expect something this big. It's about as big as the 1080 Ti cards, one of which I have in my computer.
We're a little bit. We're kind of suckers when it comes to things that are shiny.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for the whole mining craze, I probably wouldn't have even had the 1080 Ti. But I saw an opportunity and I took it, and it paid off. So now I have a 1080 Ti post mining craze.
Yep. But so that was something we found shiny. But there's been a few things, and there's been a lot of noise so far about 5G, and there's been some talk about 5G devices coming up at CES. We have one thing also that caught our attention was, about a few weeks ago, AT&T said they were going to roll out 5G to a few select cities. There's a little bit about that. We talked about it before, I believe. And now we're hearing that AT&T is going to be rebranding their 4G network as 5GE.
Yeah, 5G evolution. I mean, this is almost exactly what they did with the transition of 4G LTE. If you remember back at that time, they had HSPA Plus, which was 3G that was advanced enough that it actually reached the speeds of the beginning 4G LTE networks. And so they thought they would still remain relevant in the eyes of the consumer by just branding their phone, oh, look, we're 4G, because they were, quote unquote, equivalent in speed. But they didn't plan on actually rolling out real 4G LTE until way after, by almost a year, the end of 2011, I believe it was, which was significantly delayed compared to, say, Verizon. And they still wanted to make it look like they were in the game. So what's the harm in a little bit of rebranding, right? And
it's a little bit questionable, but at the same time, well, the other big three aren't exactly taking this lying down.
well,
And
to be
Verizon
fair,
and Sprint have already taken a couple shots, but I think I still get a kick out of T-Mobile's response.
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick. This is what T-Mobile did. They responded, "Oh, I didn't realize it was that easy. Be right back, updating. Oh, look, 9G done, totally 9G right there." The funny thing is, it was T-Mobile back when back in the 4G transition that first rebranded their 3G HSPA Plus network to 4G, and then AT&T got mad at them for doing that, and then quickly rebranded their same HSPA Plus to 4G as well. And that's partly why Verizon differentiated by actually just putting LTE at the top of their phone, so you'd know it was actual 4G LTE rather than just a rebranded 3G. And I remember going through that whole transition phase, wondering when 4G was going to come to my area, and was happy when it finally did, and you could see the speed difference. I didn't really give too much thought to the false advertising almost that these other companies were doing by branding it 4G. And they're trying to get around that by putting this little itty bitty E at the bottom, right next to the big 5G letters, so that they're evolving to it. It's not 5G, but it's getting there. It's evolution. I think the fact that they're even getting this close to calling it 5G just reeks of misinformation and misleading consumers. And it doesn't do well for us as consumers. I think they just need to avoid that altogether and maybe even just do 4G plus or some kind of branding of that nature, so that when 5G actually does get rolled out in your area, it's 5G. You know it, and it works like 5G.
Yeah, it's not fake news.
Did you just say fake news? I think you just said the bad words.
Shh.
So,
but
in the same,
there were also some 5G devices that we actually have seen some information about as well.
Well, yeah, in that vein, Qualcomm, their VP said there's about 30 different phones with 5G modems expected to release this year. And I'll tell you one thing, iPhone is not one of them. They already said that they won't be putting 5G in their phone until next April, I think is when that cycle comes around, right?
I think it's about April when Apple usually drops theirs, yeah.
Yeah. But to be fair, only a few cities are going to be really lit up with 5G in 2019 anyway, so I don't really blame them for waiting that long. But part of the reason why they're waiting that long is because of that headbutting that Apple and Qualcomm have right now. Apple doesn't want to put Qualcomm in their phones anymore because of this spat, and so they have to be reliant on Intel to provide them with their 5G mobile antenna, and Intel's 5G antenna is not ready. 10 nanometer problem, right?
Yeah, I think they did. Didn't they talk about that a little bit? Or am I missing? I missed that part.
In their keynote, they actually talked about a 5G antenna chip that is meant to go in cell towers to process 5G traffic and use AI to detect uh, streams of traffic that are running through that chip and prioritize or QoS that traffic on the fly. And they showed examples of running like remote robotic surgery over 5G. I don't know about you, but I'd probably opt not to have that surgery if that was the case. And
Well, if you're in the middle of nowhere and
well, your doctor could remote in from his, palace over in, I don't know, some foreign country and have low latency, right? That's the big thing that everyone that talks about 5G says is low latency, and they're right. It is a very low latency network. The problem is it's less distance that signal can travel due to the wavelength that it runs on. And so there has to be more towers to actually provide you with a full 5G experience. And so microsites and things like that are actually starting to come up in the works. But they were able to push 100 gigabit through this chip, and they showed it automatically QoSing this traffic it detected as this remote operation. They had streaming of football, they had some other web surfing and things like that, and it would prioritize the traffic accordingly. My thoughts on the matter are, if it's end-to-end encryption, how is it going to know the difference, right? I don't know. Maybe there was the assumption it was unencrypted traffic. I don't know. There's
what they're planning with that exactly.
Yeah, there was a few unknowns in the demonstration that it was a demo. That's what it really was. So, but speaking of 5G devices, let's talk Samsung's Galaxy lineup. It recently leaked on some Chinese social media website that a lot of detailed specs about the S10 lineup. There's 5 variants. We're looking at some good storage configurations. 6 gig, 128 gig of storage, 8 gig of RAM with 512 gig of storage, and 12 gig of RAM with 1 terabyte of local storage. I would assume that there's also the ability for an SD card to expand that even further if you feel the need. Would you
like your phone to store everything?
Yes. The entry-level S10 Lite has your assortment of colors: yellow, white, black, blue, and green. Whereas the normal S10, they're talking 6.1 inch with the full curved screen, ultrasonic fingerprint recognition, 3,500 milliamp hour battery. It has a single front camera, but with a triple camera, which is a wide angle, telephoto, and a super wide angle on the back. And you got your black, white, blue, and green for that. And then the S10 Plus, which is probably going to be the one that actually has that 12 gig, 1 terabyte only. As far as that might be the only model that will have that kind of configuration. It's blue, white, black, green. Well, we're talking 6.4 inch curved screen with a 400 milliamp hour battery. And there's a couple of different chips that they're going to use in it. The Enios 9820 is most likely going to be the international chip, with the slightly faster Snapdragon 855 as the US version. So these are all things that have kind of been leaked and already. So this is more of a reaffirmation of those leaks. So I'm pretty certain this is probably what we'll end up seeing on launch. I would expect these phones to be in hand sometime April to May timeframe, if not slightly sooner if they accelerated their timeline, which they might very well have done. So something to look forward to, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet, at least officially, but we're waiting.
Yep. I hear you have some Apple related information you want to share as well.
Yeah, apparently. Well, as you know, Apple doesn't ever attend CES, ever.
Yeah, they have their own thing that they run and do. Why would they want to attend CES, right?
So But this time they decided to try to troll some of the bigger companies, specifically, taking shots at, Google, Amazon, and they paid for space on the side of the Spring Hill Suites Marriott Hotel and splashed this giant banner. We're talking like 8 stories or so. And it shows, the outline of what would be an iPhone with the phrase, "What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone," because it's in Vegas, so we're going to play on that.
Of course.
And so, while Apple, holds on to it a little bit better in general when you compare it to, like what Google and Amazon do with some of the data in general, that saying is still not entirely accurate.
Yeah, it's a little disingenuous for sure. I mean, we've had that issue where a recording of a private conversation was sent to a wrong user. That was Amazon's Alexa, of course. And then, of course, Alexa also mistakenly sent 1,700 voice recordings from another user. And you got your Google Assistant on the Android, which is also screening information that it hears, just waiting for the "Hey Google," right? But to be fair, Siri's also waiting for stuff like that too. Apple does a lot better job anonymizing the data that goes out to the cloud to be processed and returned. But I mean, you got things as well like the Celebrity Gate. I guess you can call it the fappening or whatever you would like, where a bunch of celebrities didn't know that their phones were configured to sync to the cloud. I mean, it's not necessarily a default setting, but it is a question that is asked, and you have to tell it no if you don't want it to. And most people are actually going to say yes, because who doesn't want the reassurance that your photos are secure and safe in the form of being backed up, not necessarily from hackers, though. As the Celebrity Gate thing shows, if your questions that are asked to get into your account, if you forget your password, are too weak, then somebody's going to be able to get in. As an aside, when you're doing passwords and you're using security questions to recover those passwords in the event you lose them, my recommendation is to either pick questions that aren't public domain, something that it won't show up as your high school's mascot, your dog's name. Don't pick any of those questions. Pick something more obscure. I don't know.
Well,
let's see. What would be your?
One thing I've actually heard on that is, for you take one of those questions, you do not answer it. You do not answer that particular question. You use it as like a key. It's like, what's your first pet? Lamborghini. What?
Yeah, you do a nonsensical answer that works as a password itself. Provide the answer to a different question. Where is your honeymoon spot? And then you pick your favorite pizza restaurant. Whatever works for you, but try to make it hard to have somebody who isn't you guess what that password is just off of a quick Google search, which is how the Celebrity Gate thing happened. These famous people had questions like, "What was your high school mascot?" And anyone with 5 minutes on Google could figure that out.
Yes, you always have to think about that kind of thing.
Yeah. But still, iPhone, while being a little bit better in not actually directly selling your information, and by the way, Google also doesn't directly sell your information either. They use it internally for all of their stuff that they do. They're an advertising company. But just because they don't do it directly doesn't mean an application like, let's say Facebook, it doesn't get a hold of that information and then just willy-nilly share it out to the whole world and sundry on accident or not. Definitely don't overshare. I try not to even overshare on personal media or social media in general, just so that it's kind of a safety blanket thing, I guess you could say.
Yeah. But let's head back to our list here before we get too far off topic, because we're still going.
Yeah. I mean, with CES, I guess today could really be summarized as 8K OLED TV screens and AI. I mean, there was...
And robots. Don't forget robots.
Yeah, well, robots, AI, close. I mean, there was some other things. There was a lot of like computer cases and laptops that were announced by a whole host of different companies, Alienware and Asus and such, and showing off their RGB everything. Let's actually talk a little LG and their screens. You can see they have their OLED flexible screens set up in what they called the Waterfall, and they put mirrors at each end of the room so it looks longer than it actually is. This is a mirror right here, so don't be fooled, but you can see they're just doing this grid of screens, and it actually looks really good. They're just showing off their panel tech and their flexible display technology. Something else they did to show off their flexible screen technology is this. It's their Rollable LED TV, where it just ascends out of a box that has the speakers for the television. I mean,
hide your TV today.
It's an interesting concept. It reminds me a lot of that 110-inch short throw projector, 4K, whatever it was, a couple years back that was selling for 10 grand. They didn't say a price on this television, but if you have to ask, it's probably too expensive for you. I think that's about how I would classify it. They will be selling it, though. That is the big key, is you can end up actually buying this, but it's going to be prohibitively expensive, in my opinion. Whether it's 10, 20K, who knows? But yeah, it is pretty nice. It'll actually come down to a short height and give you little apps and things. Some cars have the same kind of thing with their touch panels. But it is a pretty awesome looking screen. It's 8K. All of the panels they talked about were 8K today, really. And of different sizes, anywhere from 95 down to 65 inch. I don't think they really covered anything that was larger than that. But
98 is the largest thing they've shown off this year.
Yeah. I personally wouldn't mind having 110-inch, 120-inch screen covering my wall, but yeah, it sometimes might be a little unreasonable. Yeah, this is a pretty cool display. They actually had a full display that showed 5 of these or 7 of these. I'm not sure on the exact number, end to end. And
I think it was 5.
Was it 5? It was.
So they also
end to end with a backdrop, and they would all raise and lower it kind of in a stair step, and it would have some show that would play from the backdrop onto the televisions and things. It was kind of cool. But I think out of everything, it was just kind of a ho-hum day. I mean, nothing terribly exciting, nothing too unexpected. We all knew 5G was coming. We all knew OLED was a thing. Micro LEDs from Samsung were interesting for sure. I think that might be a good competing tech to this OLED stuff. Hopefully it'll have a solution. It should be a solution to the burn-in and life expectancy of the OLED sets. So that might be something to consider as well. I mean, you remember plasma televisions, right?
Yeah, I just didn't really care about them.
Well, the plasma televisions, they had a burn-in issue, and you couldn't put them in direct sunlight.
Yeah, we're hearing about that one, though.
Yeah. OLED, they've been working on it. It doesn't have as much of the issue anymore, but they still have a a life expectancy concern, and you also have a direct sunlight burn in concern as well. So I'm leaning more personally towards the micro LEDs that Samsung was showing off. I think that has some distance to run. Will be pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, I think the day really was partially quieter just because everybody was trying to get in and see what all was being shown off on the floor.
Yeah, they were all playing in the toys section, right?
Literally.
But
I mean, they literally had things like, a dance ball and a slide to show off, like, I think it was a Samsung, was it a Samsung phone with a slow motion?
oh yeah,
It's like,
they would stick
maybe
it
no,
on
it's one of their phones.
a
It was one of
track
their,
in a sphere, and it would run around the track, and kind of like what you would think a bullet time animation in Matrix was. But instead of having a ring of 40 or 50 picture taking devices, it was just on a track, and the phone itself would roll around this sphere and give you this 360 path of the phone. Gimmicky, not really practical except for in party atmosphere kind of stuff. I do think that the VR stuff that they were showing off, like the Vive with the eye tracking it built into it, the Vive Pro, it has some good merit to it. They sold it as an attachment that you could add on to their existing Vive headset, but this actually has it built in. They can determine where on the screen you're looking, and that has connotation for dynamically adjusting how the scene is rendered to improve frames per second by sharpening the areas you're actually looking at rather than where they think you're looking at.
Yeah, so basically you get a render context. So
Yeah.
what you're seeing is can actually be, produced in high resolution without really impacting much else, because it can, fade or fuzz everything else.
Yeah, and
So
I mean, Galaxy has tried it a little bit with their like smart stay, where they could determine if you're actually looking at the screen or not, and not dim the screen if you're looking at it. And I think they also tried to do things like if you were doing eye gestures, like if you look down, it would automatically scroll up for you and things like that. So, I mean, it's been played around with a little bit in the past, pioneered by some companies or others. Uh, I think it really just has to find its niche and go from there. But it's definitely going to be a thing in the future, if nothing else, so that applications or websites can track where on the page you're actually looking at. Yeah, that's the other scary thing they actually mentioned was, this is something that could be used by a computer and a website requesting permission to see where on the page the hotspots are to give you a better experience, but to collect data on what on the page you're looking at. Where their ads are being looked at is probably what they didn't want to say. But yeah, there's some potential for abuse, but there's a lot of potential, especially in gaming, for this to really be a good thing. And I really hope they latch onto the good and don't abuse the bad, at least too much. Because there's always going to be that someone that's going to abuse the power that's being invented.
yeah, it's kind of the way it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I'm really hoping that the AR, VR stuff gets a little bit more advanced, makes it something that makes me compelled to get a second generation headset or something of that nature. Because I like the idea, the concept of AR and VR, and I want to see it succeed because I want to have those experiences. And right now, it's more of a gimmicky thing with a few almost virtual reality story mode games. And then you got racers, which is about the other fun thing that I've seen is you got racers where you get like radial G and things like that you can really get immersed in the experience. Spacefaring shooters. Yeah, I know that Skyrim has your VR version as well. that could be interesting, but I think that might feel a little cumbersome. But I think the thing we're most excited about is tomorrow.
Hey,
Bright and early at 9 Eastern is going to be the keynote
9
from AMD.
Pacific. 9 Pacific.
Is it 9 Pacific?
9 Pacific. So it's 10 a.m. for us.
Well, that's going to be the keynote from AMD, and it's going to be a doozy based on all the leaks that we've been covering. So
if even half the leaks are true, it's going to be good.
Hey, all I'm looking forward to is perhaps just getting a 16-core CPU for my desktop and calling it a day. You know, if I have to buy a new motherboard for it, so be it. I can understand. You know, I have a X370 motherboard with a Ryzen 2000 series in it. So I've already taken advantage of at least what Intel provides with their boards, right? 2 generations, and that's it. If that.
Yeah. If that. You know, a lot of the recent stuff has been you get that generation. Have fun.
Yep. And with the new 8-core that they have out, it only goes into the 390 board, or is it 490 board? It only is supported in that board, and that board only supports the top 2 CPUs. You know, the i9 series. You can't go and throw an i3 in it. But if AMD has to do something similar, which I doubt they will, I think they're just going to have certified boards to run the 16-core rather than actually differentiating it as much. They'll have Ryzen 9, so that'll be comparable as well.
Yeah, at least if you're looking into trying to catch, at least for us, I know there's a couple of streams, so you may not hear us first, but if you do, you can get it. There's plenty of ways to watch the stream tomorrow morning.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Be sure to tune in tomorrow. We will provide you coverage as soon as we're able to. You know, we work like everyone else, so
unfortunately,
we'll have to do our little bit and spiel after the day is done, and give you a recap of the whole day, not just the AMD stuff, but I have a feeling we're going to talk a lot about the AMD stuff because I see that as the highlight of the day.
At least for us.
Yeah. So thanks for watching. Hit that little alarm button so you get notified when we release these videos. Do subscribe and like the video. Throw some comments if you want us to talk about something in particular. We'd love to hear it. So leave us some comments, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for watching.